This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks. I have the pleasure of having my third professional from Cultivate Advisors on the Halo Talks show. Welcome in Ryan by way of Scottsdale, and he is going to talk about business owner freedom. We're going to talk about coaching. We're going to talk about the future of teams, and we're going to talk about the future of successfully growing and exiting your business. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you want to give your background here first, and then talk about what the role of director of partnerships means at Cultivate, and then we'll riff away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent 12 years in private practice, always had the entrepreneurial itch. So launched and built and exited 7 private practices over the years. Family background in franchising. So business development, business growth. Been a serial entrepreneur for going on 13 years now, still own multiple companies, in the middle of building out a really cool new concept that we're excited, big tech platform, health tech space. Came on with Cultivate Advisors about a year ago to run partnerships for them. So a lot of my professional background, I dealt with a lot of partnerships in bringing different vendors onto our companies as we expanded, and really working those relationships and figuring out how you create those true win-win type partnerships. And so Cultivate's a pretty interesting mix of a bunch of entrepreneurs all under one brand. A lot of very, very different backgrounds, but one of the requirements of Cultivate is you've had to have grown and successfully exited at least one business. So it's really cool having that diverse background of the people that are in the entrepreneur space as well.
Yeah, so a lot of people say, this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to growing and successfully exiting a business. I think there's way more people that want to sell their business than want to actually buy it. So it takes a lot of work to actually be able to pass it on, or else you might have an earnout forever where they never actually want to let you out of the business. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the projects that you're working on now, or some of the fits that you found where hey, this is an entrepreneur. I basically have seen their movie before, and I'm going to basically coach them and keep them within the, lanes on a bowling cliche. I'm going to keep you out of the gutter, kind of like at a 5-year-old's birthday party.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that they say 80% of entrepreneurs never sell their business even when they intend to. And I think one of the hardest reasons for that, when you're looking at, I learned this the hard way with the first business that I tried to exit, don't create yourself a job. If you build yourself as the keystone of the company, and your removal is going to substantially alter the bottom line or productivity of that company, no one's going to buy it unless they happen to have your exact skill set, which is probably close to zero. So I think it's being in a spot where you let the systems, the processes, and the product or service that you sell be the value of the business, not your unique skill set to where your removal collapses the company. So I think that's a big thing. And that's the difference between a business that's sellable and a business that is mom and pop and maybe can be profitable, can be enjoyable to run, but isn't scalable.
Yeah. So what parts of are you a lot of bankers and advisors? What we do is we focus on just the Halo sector, health, active lifestyle, outdoors. Have you kind of carved your niche, and, are you disciplined now to be like, hey, look, you got a great business, but it's not my skill set. I got to say no. And maybe say no allows you to say yes more fervently when you see something that fits.
I think it's quality over quantity, exactly to your point. I think early in a lot of our careers, we feel like saying no is a bad thing. And I think the longer you've been in the entrepreneurial space, the business game, and I call it a game because it really is, people typically win that are just too dumb to quit, more or less. You just got to be consistent, do the things that no one likes, and do it better than other people because you're just willing to do it longer. So I think it is learning. You get to a point, and some of us are smarter than others. I was pretty slow to get to that space of realizing that saying no is a healthy component of life. And when you say yes to the right things, you can go a lot further and a lot faster and have more impact versus saying yes to everything and just diluting your skill set. I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing the other side a disservice in that situation as well.
Yeah. A lot of companies, I think, don't necessarily spawn out of a frustration that an individual had and say, hey, I'm going to figure out how to solve this for other people. Some people come into us, pre-COVID, and would say, as a boutique studio side, saying hey, I'm going to take aerial yoga, and I'm going to take a cycling class. I'm going to mash it up, and I'm going to be is that solving something? Do you think that's like taking two trends and kind of putting like two scoops of ice cream on, and then you realize like there was no frustration, nobody was looking for that. It's just
Yeah,
like,
you're not solving a problem.
A combo meal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you kind of go in and have a hard conversation with a, entrepreneur that's maybe got something interesting, but, has got to pivot and really understand like the client base that that they're addressing, and like, what do they actually need from you versus like, hey, I got this cool technology. It's like, yeah, but like, what do you help me do? Are you saving me time? Are you generating more revenue? What's the result of me using this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times it's do you solve a problem? I mean, are people actually looking for what you're looking to offer as a solution? If you don't, then you don't have a business. I mean, that's business 101, I think. And let's face it, we have no
Yeah.
shortage of ideas. Everybody has ideas. And you hear the people that say, oh, I thought of that 10 years ago. It's like thinking about things is easy. Everybody has more thoughts than they can ever
Yeah.
implement. It's do you have the ability to turn it into a business plan? Do you have the ability to me, success in business is it's almost all, yeah, the idea has got to be right. But once you get to that point, there's a lot of people that start the race and they have good ideas. It's do you have the discipline? A lot of people confuse motivation with discipline. Motivation is what you have at the starting line. Discipline is what gets you to the finish line. And I think that's a big piece to focus on. And can you systematize it to where it is reproducible? And I think the other thing, like you guys having marketing backgrounds as well, I think from a messaging standpoint, can you concisely explain to a layperson what problems you solve as well? Because that was something like having a healthcare background. I start using industry jargon and
Yeah.
talking in processes of health and physiology and things like that, and people just their eyes are still looking at you, but they died inside 10 minutes ago. You're not having a positive conversation.
Right.
You're not moving someone in a direction you need to be a potential consumer or an investor in your business. So I think it's really important to clearly and concisely be able to describe what you do. With my background being in healthcare and functional medicine, it's like if you start talking about labs and lifestyle modifications and stress management and all those things, it becomes really difficult for people to truly grasp what you do. So you've got to be able to kind of explain it to that third grader, that fourth grader, that fifth grader, not talk like you're Bill Nye the science guy all the time.
So with Cultivate, you guys have a pretty, I'd say like broad mandate. Like you could help somebody come in and, polish up a business plan for a Series A for a friends and family round. You can kind of coach them through. You can do an M&A assignment. So, what's your personal sweet spot, and how do you pull teams together at Cultivate? Because you obviously got a pretty broad network of experts. So how does that work? And what would be a selling point for somebody listening to this saying like, hey, I like how this guy's talking. Sounds like this is in my wheelhouse. Like, how does that work?
I think one of the things that I do well is it's matchmaking. It's figuring out which type of advisor would you need, who's going to be able to add the most value to the areas you're lacking in. I kind of feel like in business, when you're advising is more insulting. No one wants to hear it, but you need to hear it to be able to be successful. Sorry about hanging out next to the airport right now. But I think being in that spot where you can match a business owner that, and if a business owner has needs support in people and structure, don't stick them with an advisor that's really experienced in marketing and sales. Like being able to identify where are that individual's gaps, what are their big picture goals, and aligning them with the right person to be able to help them to get from point A to point B. I think, quite frankly, if we have to sell what we do, it's probably not a good fit. I think it's more of an opportunity presentation, and at the end of the day, the business owner knows is this what I'm looking for? Like I've worked with a lot of like doctors and health coaches over the years, and it's like everybody wants to have a successful business, but do you really? You want the outcome, but are you willing to kind of go through the journey it takes? It's not pretty. It's not usually enjoyable. There's a reason why a lot more people start that race than end it. And so I think it's important to have realistic expectations as to what are you willing to sacrifice to make your dream, make your business actually become a success too.
Let me ask you a question that kind of comes up with a lot of entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm trying to figure out who my next hire is. In this world of tapping into outsourced partners or, graphic designers or somebody that could do things a lot cheaper, not onboard, a full-time employee. What are some of the things that you've seen, in the healthcare space where, as an example, we work with a couple of large healthcare companies, and they're like, look, no offshore developers. Like, that's just how we do things, and we're not taking that risk for HIPAA compliance reasons and for several other different, process chain related, with servers and where data is. What are some of the things that you kind of see as like, look, this is mission critical pretty much across the board, but anything else, if you find the right partner, it's fine putting somebody on a monthly retainer or do project work.
I think mission alignment is such an important thing. I mean, I think that we always want to look at the objective side of things, but I think you have to look at the subjective piece. If the people that you are working with, the people that are putting their having their influence over your company, if they don't really believe in what you do, if they don't get excited about your brand, they're probably not the right people to be influencing your brand. So I think mission alignment's really important. And I think that you have to be. I think a lot of people start hiring people and bringing team members on before their business plan's really solid. Like, you have to know where you're going from a leadership standpoint as a business owner before you can bring people on and expect them to help you to get to your destination, accomplish your goals. I think that I've always been I write all my goals on the wall. I stare at them. I'm a big Post-it notes on the wall every day when I'm sitting at my office. Yeah. When I am traveling, I take dry erase markers. I write things on the mirror in hotels. I'm that guy. So I think you really have to be clear and concise with what you want to accomplish. But I also think that those team members have to be very aligned and everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. So from a standpoint of you kind of parachuting in, there's a lot of companies out there that need help, but they're not able to pay for it. They come to you or us as, kind of like a last resort of like, hey, can you fix this? So how do you think about, whether it's potentially taking equity in a company? I don't do that anymore because I don't really have control over the outcomes. How do you think about that? And how do you think about being in the advisory business, trying to help people and wake up every morning and say like, hey, I got these X number of business owners, financial and emotional, freedom. Yet, it just, they can't pay for it. And that's kind of not on me.
Yeah, that's a really good question that could have a really long winding answer to it. I'll answer quickly on both sides. So that's a big piece of the tech platform that we are building. We realize in healthcare, it's such a fractured industry, especially in alternative healthcare, the non-pharmaceutical healthcare route. There are a lot of people that fundamentally believe similar things. They just use different tools. They use different messaging, and there's just no unity of message. And it's really hard when you're dealing with traditional medicine and call it what you want to call it. The allopathic model of healthcare, the pharmaceutical model, which is a pretty big unified entity, and everybody's trying to commoditize their little niches. It's very hard to grow. And so we're building out a two-sided marketplace to really allow providers and service providers and end users of those services, products and services that fit in that world, all in one place, have that ecosystem where everybody can connect, communicate, and have access to those things and educate themselves. On the business advisory side of things, I think it's sometimes you got to walk before you run. A lot of people are so focused on the end, they don't realize that, hey, there might be 25 steps you need to get to do before you're even ready for it. And one of my business mentors said that it's really important to know that you're not good enough. You don't deserve to be successful until you've learned the lessons that failure teaches you. And so I think that's a really important piece. Business owners want to go from point A to point B, but maybe you're not ready for point B. You haven't suffered's a strong term, but you haven't gone through the trials, the tribulations, the difficulties it takes to be solid enough to be able to handle that level of success.
I hear you. Talk about, am I pronouncing this right? Novice Health and the journey there.
Novus? Yeah. So Novus, I was in private practice for a long time, had a few in Charlotte, in the Hilton Head area, Denver, and my family's background was franchising. We kind of threw the idea around, do we want to franchise? We started down that route. 5 weeks later, COVID hit, and we were like, all right, now it's like, do we want to be leasing up a bunch of commercial space? Can we do this more efficiently? At the end of the day, for us, it was really about what do we need to do to give the customers, the consumers of this type of healthcare access to something that's impactful for them. And we all let our egos and our ideas get in the way sometimes. And it was kind of like, you know what? It's not really about me. It's not about my background. It's not about us as a company. It's about the end user, the consumers of these services we offer. How can we best serve that community, and how can we impact more people that, quite frankly, don't even know that we exist or our type of healthcare is an option? Most people don't realize that roughly 80% of chronic health conditions are directly contributed to lifestyle and can be reversed or prevented with lifestyle modifications. So whether it's lifestyle changes, stress management, diet, nutrition, supplementation, smoking cessation, regular exercise, health is typically not that complicated. We just make it way more complicated than it is, because then people can be sold things they don't necessarily need. So I think that's a really important piece is that accessibility and that impact that can be had with it.
You talk about franchising. Maybe we could do a little get your perspective and maybe a little like 2-minute primer course here on like the reasons to franchise and what we see in the industry in the item 19, which is the financials of the network. Typically, that's listed in the franchise disclosure document. So anyone who's looking at a franchise, definitely take that into account and look at what the unit economics are before you pull the trigger. Even if you're getting sold something that might sound like, the best thing since, a McDonald's franchise. What are some of the things where you said to somebody, hey, look, you might think that you're getting ahead of the curve by having other people spend capital and you're like flattered that they're going to send you back 6% and 2% to an ad fund. But like if your unit economics don't work and you're signing people up and they're putting personal guarantees down on franchise agreements and they're signing leases and you basically sold them something that you haven't figured out the prototype yet. Talk a little bit of what you've seen on that front. There's obviously been some rules in place, but there's still somewhat of a Wild West, I think, on, franchising that proliferates that are not proliferating business models that should be franchised.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your industry. I think one of the things we learned, just because you can do something really successfully in the healthcare space doesn't mean that you can teach a layperson to have that same skill set in the same space. I think that's a really difficult thing. It was why before we went too far down that path, we said, you know what, we're going to pivot our direction because we feel like some industries you can come in and say, hey, like most people don't own a McDonald's because they're passionate about Big Macs or French fries. They own it because they want to own a business. They want to make money. But when you're in an industry that is more tied to really integrity, the integrity of putting a pickle or a tomato first really doesn't matter on a Big Mac. You'll be okay either way. But the integrity and the knowledge of an industry, it's very hard to run a healthcare business if you have no passion. Like don't go buy a yoga franchise because when you've never done yoga, you got to be passionate about your business. You've got to be able to lead that business. Your employees will follow you. And you mentioned unit economics. I think you have to look at like, hey, after I pay, it's risk reward. Like how much money can I actually make? How much meat is on that bone? How long is it going to take me? I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is they go into franchise and they say, okay, I have $250,000. It says in the FDD, it's only going to take $200,000 to get it up and running and 6 months of working capital. How many businesses are profitable in the first 6 months? What if it takes you a year? What if it takes you 2 years? Are you willing to lose money for a year or 2 or 3 years? Don't look at a franchise as this golden goose where just because I show up and I slap someone else's name on my business, that all of a sudden people are going to become driving in hordes. You look at some that have gone up and down, and even in successful franchises, there are people that fail miserably and there are top performers. What's the difference? Like you really have to be honest with yourself. Do you actually want to be a business owner? And if you're not sure, then the answer is no. Go become more certain with that. So I think that's an important piece. Be honest with yourself. Don't just say, hey, I'm tired of the corporate world. I'm tired of working for somebody else. I'm going to go be my own boss. You ask anyone who's been a business owner, I would say that they would, if they're being honest, they're going to say it's probably been one of the biggest challenges of their life. Now, there's a reason most business owners stay business owners. That there's pros and cons, but you've got to be willing to scratch and claw and fight, not just show up, I think.
Got it. There's definitely a lot of good takeaways from this. In closing here, you got any quotes for our quote library? And then I'm going to do a quick lightning round with you.
Yeah, one of my business mentors, one of my favorite quote. I asked him, I said, "What's the most important piece of business advice you could give me?" And he said, without blinking, "Make sure your say do matches. If you say you're going to do something, you better do it, or don't say you're going to do it in the first place." And I think you'll be amazed at how much grace you get with people just because you do the things you say you're going to do, even if you don't always do them perfectly.
Yeah, I got one that that always resonates with me is experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So I got a lot of experience. Let me tell you what happened. And almost like a lot of the advisory business is almost like just storytelling at this point.
Yep.
Like here's a movie. This is what happened here. If you don't want to fall into that ending, like let me tell you what we could do and kind of course correct before this movie gets too far along where it's inevitable. So that's one of the words some of the things we do. When I talk to a new client, I said, look, you want to hire somebody to sell your business and sell for cheaper? Like, have at it, dude. But like, I'm going to navigate this through because I've sailed this ship across the water, and it's going to be a bumpy ride no matter what we do. Like, this is not M&A is the Wild West, and it's always going to be. So, quick lightning round here: AM or PM workouts? Which one are you?
I work out AM. I'm an in the dark, fresh out of bed when no one else is there kind of guy.
Nice. Comedy, drama, or documentaries?
I like them all, but I got to be a comedy guy. So we need more levity in life.
Nice. OCD or let it flow?
You got to be a bit. I'm probably more OCD, but sometimes it's Jesus take the wheel and let it flow because you got to learn how to just accept things you can't control, I guess.
Cardio or strength?
Strength. Cardio. My cardio can be lifting faster.
Two more: email, voice, or text. What's your preferred mode of communication?
Voice or text. I hate email. I've gotten to the point where it's like, if I never got another email again, my life would be complete.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, and then the last one's an easy one: entrepreneurial roller coaster or stability. You've obviously answered that question.
Everybody falls into multiple businesses. Yeah, stability's never been my MO.
Yeah, it's not one of your. It's not probably one of your post-it notes, I would suspect.
No, it is not, unfortunately.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Hopefully, entrepreneurs listen. They'll reach out to you, and appreciate what you guys are doing and trying to solve what we think is important, which is loneliness, obesity, diabetes, and this is all part of the ecosystem. And feel free to use our term HALO, Health, Active, Lifestyle, Outdoors. Trying to create the halo effect, and you guys are square in the center of that.
Love it. Thanks, Pete.
Awesome.